Laboratory for Religious Pluralism, for inviting me. I'm going to start with my argument like this, you know where, as we used to say in the past, I come from. I'm not a lawyer by training. I am a political scientist, but if you do religion and politics, it's very hard to not touch on law. So my perspective is not the one you may be familiar from your discipline. I look at the existing status of Sharia not only through the tenets of the Islamic tradition per se, so I do not have a normative approach. My goal is to understand what do Muslims, non-Muslim state actors are talking about and fighting about when they talk about Sharia. So my position is to say that the monopolization of some elements of the religious tradition by the state ruler is a key factor in the reduction and politicization of Sharia. In other words, in my work, I show that political Islam doesn't start with the Islamic movement, which is the dominant trend. I show and I have documented that political Islam started the nation building by secular nationalist rule of national communities, even when they have so-called privatized religion, and I have shown that in the case of Turkey, for example. So I'm not going to extend too much on that. But so what does it mean? I'm going to give you a little more theoretical background. I'm not dealing with nationalism. Nationalism is an ideology. You can use it as you want, ethnic, primarily, civic, civil. What I'm looking at is nation as a modern political community. And nobody has really paid attention to that. Everybody look at the state. But what is central in our modern understanding of religion is that the nation has superseded what was the central community, which was religion. And again, I'm not inventing anything. Durkheim was the one who said what religion is the central institution that provide cohesion to a group. But that's not true anymore. The nation state has taken over this prerogative. What we have not looked into is the fact that it has completely changed the tenets of all religious tradition in a way that we are still looking at what was before the nation state to try to understand what's happening now. And the work I have done and continue to do is to show that we have to look at the normative change by actors that are both secular, liberal, Islamist, fundamentalist, call them all of them share some kind of what Norbert Elias, not Bourdieu, calls a habitus. Otherwise, there is no national community if you don't share something. And I have done some incursion in Israel, it's exactly the same thing. Of course, there is a Jewish nation, Zion, before the nation state, but the state of Israel has not been built on these two principles, has not been built on the traditional messianistic Zion. It has been built on these two principles, and these two principles clash with the nation state everywhere. So what does it mean for Islam? So as I said here, nation is the sum of memories, emotions, values that align the cultural and political identity of people with a certain territories and institutions that control this particular, not only territory, but also people. But at the same time, and that's part of the limit of the Western scholarship on religion, we tend, and that's a discussion I have with my colleagues in sociology of religion, in religious studies, to look at religion as a personal feature. Again, sociologically, religion is a central community. Actually, it's in the Aristotle sense, the police, meaning the fundamental community where we say we, and we have rules that organize this community, and there is no difference between religion and politics. Politics and religion difference is a modern foundational difference of our modernity. But I don't have time to insist on that. So nationhood intersects with religious community and has redefined religious norms, expectations, and doctrines everywhere. So I take it from there. I'm not an Islamicist or a Quranist. I look at the way that today the nation state has reorganized what is Islamic norm and also what is Islamic law. So I'm going to pass on that because it's about the fact that the sacred and the profane is not the same as the religious and the political. Actually, the national community claim sacred status. People die for a flag. If this is not sacred in the sense of exactly what Durkheim said about the foundational community, I don't know what it is. I mean, why is dying for the flag more advanced than dying for God? Because we all have this habit with religion versus politics, and it's the same that sacred versus profane. No, it's not. And once you make this difference, you understand the patterns of competition between the religious community and the political community. So the method, this is in the new book, it's, I'm not going to insist on that. I do both institutional history and conceptual history, and I connect both to the particular context of the nation in which this is happening. So it means that I bring in history, sociology, and religious studies, not only Islamic studies, but that's another. So what does it mean for Islam concretely? And this we have a discussion with my colleagues in Islamic studies. Until the nation state, and the empire is not a nation state. The empire is not based on equality of membership and is not based on sovereignty of people. There is no central institution. The Islamic legislation was first and foremost aimed at the people, for the people, with no immediate consideration for a central political power that actually didn't exist. So before the nation state, religious authorities, in the Durkheimian sense, provided rulings for local communities, which we tend to forget included Muslims and non-Muslims, which is also part of the new imaginary of Muslims, for example, thinking of their original Muslim communities as homogeneous. They were never homogeneous. The Prophet Muhammad comes to Medina, the first thing he does is to acknowledge the religious diversity, the Medina constitution. There was some problem, there were expulsion of some Jewish tribe, but it was there. I do not know any monotheistic tradition that based on this pluralistic approach. Okay? So that was the way that Islamic jurisprudence developed in the tension between the need for the unified authority of the Islamic world and local established authority. So it was, in this way, more cognizant of the plural aspects, not only Muslim and non-Muslims, but also of the different levels in which Islamic law, and Sharia was not positive law, as you would say before, it was a method. And this method was the monopoly of the ulema that didn't depend on any central political institution. So that's something we don't pay enough attention. Islamic institutions and clerics were financially and intellectually independent from the caliphal bureaucracy. So of course, sometimes Sultan used them, but in terms of institution, there was no absorption of Islamic materiality, institution, bodies, people, money, into the caliphal political system. And also, what the national level does is to erase the independence of religion at the local level. This is true everywhere, even that finished India, China, it's absolutely fascinating, independently of monotheism or not. The first thing of nationalization, and this is not new, is homogeneization, which means breaking the local independence of religious communities they used to manage themselves. This is gone everywhere. So it means that maslaha, today you ask Muslims, they will tell you public interest, because it's associated with the state. In the traditional discussion, maslaha is a common good, and it's the good of the Sharia-centered community. Ummah, if you ask any cleric today, they will tell you it's a community of Muslim believers. Until the end of, until the encounter with the European power, the Ummah is the totality of territories under the control of the Caliphate, which means that if I am a Greek Orthodox in Istanbul, I am part of the Ummah. Try to explain this to others. So because they operate on the homogenized, nationalized version of what is Islamic law, what is the Ummah, and I did the same job for jihad, so what does it mean concretely? It means that nationalization of Islam involved all these elements. All the endowments were absorbed into the state budget. There is a creation everywhere of Ministry of Religious Affairs. All the clerics came on the payroll. All the training became supervised, controlled, organized by state authority, including secular ones. I mean, it's interesting to see the curriculum today of what's considered, or was considered, the central university for Sunni Islam in El-Azhar, the impoverishment of this diversity, of this independence of thinking. This is gone. And again, we tend to look at the codification, and you are lawyers, that's what you're focusing rightly on. I wanted to look at the whole institutional aspect, what we call in my jargon, governmentality. What does it mean when even people who are not part of the system have absorbed this idea that the Sharia is what the state law is? And when they go back, they do it in a romanticized way that is not accurate vis-à-vis the historical reality, like the use of Ummah or Jihad by current Islamist movement. So I just want to give two, I may have been beyond my time.
No, you have still 8 minutes.
Okay, so usually everybody focuses on Sharia as state law. And what happened to Sharia, that used to be a way, like halakha, it's a way, it has become indeed this kind of positive law with no distinction between Sharia and fiqh, something that also Baudouin touched on, and then what I call juridization and fossilization of the Islamic law. So that's why also I was very interested by what you say, because what the Arab Israeli are doing, they're not going back to this tradition. This tradition is gone. They are operating on this system. Everybody does. Deterioration of the mechanism of transmission of Islamic expertise, which is, in my opinion, a very, very serious problem. Inequality in religious education. That's why when I hear Turkey called as a secular state, when you have the dominant Sunni school absorbed into the state system, when the clerics are paid by the state, the mosques regulated, controlled by the state, where is secular in there? And again, that's not the AKP, that was Kemal Atatürk. Okay. So I want to give two examples. The first one, indeed, the women body, and that's why you mentioned this book we wrote with José Casanova. The women body is a site of contestation, both from the state perspective and the Islamist or non-state perspective in other. And the women rights. So if you look at Egypt. So the national, what's called civil law, takes some principle from the dominant Sunni jurisprudence, but it's amalgamated with European, French, and British legal system. And what is fascinating is to see that the foundational of the family civil law of 1920, 1926 as a result of this amalgamation. So in 2000, a whole law was adopted that allowed women to obtain a divorce without the husband's consent, but under the condition that she returns the dowry. So this is in the Islamic tradition. In 2000, it was presented as a progressive element vis-à-vis Muslim women or Egyptian women. And that's the kind of irony here. And I have called this that the state law is not tolerant, while the Muslim empire were not based on equality of membership, but there was more of a tolerance and fluidity of how to come to ruling for the community, not for the state institution. That is the paradox here. Some Salafists attack the state law, saying you are destroying the Islamic tradition, you are giving more rights to women than they should have. No. Actually, the state takes to try to take prerogative on things that have been eroded, refined, reshaped by the nation. So that's a kind of a debate in which the condition of women's rights is now phrased or articulated, and that's why for me what you said about Sharia court versus civil court is interesting, because it's in some ways it fascinates my position here. I want to give another example, and I'm going to finish here. It's about the amalgamation of blasphemy, heresy, and apostasy. In the Islamic tradition, as you know, the three are differentiated, and they don't involve the same kind of punishment. What we have everywhere, even in the most secular state, Turkey in its legal system has a clause on blasphemy and not insulting the figure, the religious figure, the prophets, not only the Prophet Muhammad, etc. So what happened is that the state law has squished together heresy, apostasy, and blasphemy. And that's on this mix that also the so-called Islamists referencing to the Islamic tradition are operating. They are not operating on the non-political, in the sense of state institution approach that dominated in the Caliphal Empire. And so I want to conclude on that because I don't have time. That's what I call hegemonic Islam. So what happened in modern times that was unknown and unthinkable in the Muslim Empire, that you have to be a Muslim to be a member of the political community. And that's political Islam, and that's the reason why Sharia is used in the way that we know it, that clash with the community-centered approach, and that explains the limitation and juridization of Sharia, and some sins like blasphemy or apostasy used to be judged at the personal level. Actually, it was very rare to have trials in apostasy because the condition needed by the court were two witnesses, presence in the public space. Who would do that? And if the person was a blasphemer in his house with, saying things, the ulama would say, it's between you and God. Today this is gone. There is no more between you and God, there is between you and the state. So what used to be a sin is now a crime and a felony. And that's things we have, again, not paid attention enough because everybody think of Sharia based on these modern premises. And it is, for me, an interesting way to combine historical institutionalism with religious history and also the dynamic of power. who has the power to define? We can go up and down. Today it's the state. That's why Islam is not an Islamic state. That's the only way you can control not only the legal, but the moral and the religious correctness, which is again something unthinkable pre-state. And I stop here.